God be with you. It's funny, and not in like a ha-ha kind of funny, and like a interesting kind of funny, how life can just like shift on a dime, you know? Because I had a sermon all ready for you. It was done, it was packed away. We're going to explore this story in the Bible that's not really technically a miracle story, but if you look at it, it is a miracle story, and it has something really profound to tell us about how do we be people in a world that is mob-like and going off in all the wrong directions, and what does Jesus call us to do within that, and we're going to explore it, and it's going to be phenomenal and great. But then, this is going to be a downer of a sermon. I'm going to prep you with that. Because on Friday, something happened that led to my ex and I deciding that we have to probably put our dog Walter down. Yeah, it was hard. It sucked. It's, you guys know, it's terrible. It's terrible. And as the reality of that kind of settled down on me on Friday and Saturday, everything just began to kind of shift, right? And I got caught up in just how unfair this is to this dog. And I got caught up in how awful it is that how do we make that decision? And I got caught up in how cruel life can be, and how unfair and unjust life can be, and how the right thing should not feel like the wrong thing, because the right thing should feel good, but this does not feel good. It actually feels wrong. So is this actually wrong? And then you kind of spiral out of control. And I eventually got to the point sitting at my kitchen table where, like, no matter how I cut it, like, life can just suck. And usually at this point I'd be like, you know what I'm talking about? But I know you know what I'm talking about. Because I know there are people in this room who are going through very similar situations. And I know there are people in this room who are going through that, but with MAID. And I know there are people in this room who are going through things with their friends around cancer diagnoses and huge illnesses. And I know there are people in this room with addiction and abuse and trauma in their life. And then if we zoom out some more, we live in a world that's just bonkers. And let's just name it. Life can just be cruel sometimes, and life can just suck sometimes, and it can be full of all kinds of unfair, terrible, awful, no good things. And all too quickly, it can get really easy and maybe even like satisfying to just write everything off as cruel and awful and unjust and unfair. And then if you can even have the audacity to believe in God, it's not that far of a stretch to think that God must be cruel, unjust, and awful too, or at best indifferent. And then you're just there being like, what do you do? What do we do when life just sucks? And is hard and awful, right? And I'm not telling you this today to bleed all over you and get like, oh, Nick. I'm telling you this today because we all know this feeling. I'm telling you this today because for some reason in church, we feel like we might offend God by naming like what's bad. Like God doesn't know about it. And if we actually go to God with our laments and our rage, like we might get on God's bad side. And so let's just pretend it's all good. And so we come to church and we pretend it's all good. But we all know we're all in on the joke. But I'm also telling you this today because I want to remind you of what I have to remind myself during this time. Because it's so easy to let the bad and the unjust and the unfair color in and define everything. It's so easy and tempting and satisfying to do that. But I want to tell you this morning. I want to pull the audible and change what we're exploring because of this truth. If faith is anything, it is not something we have, it is something that we choose. If faith is anything, faith is a choice. Faith is that consistent decision to believe that despite all the evidence that tells us otherwise, despite the overwhelming abundance of evidence that tells us otherwise, it is the courageous and consistent choice to trust and to believe that God is good, that life can still be worth living, that there is beauty in the letdown, that there is holiness in the evil, that there is a presence in the absence, that there is a light in the dark, that there is grace in the struggle. And two, because we're trusting it's there, because we're making that choice to let that shape and define everything else. Faith is not something you have, it's something that you choose. It is a choice to see past everything that's right in front of us, screaming at us, saying, this is what is real. And daring to choose to say no. You are there and you are real, but behind that, underneath that, even in that, there is something so much bigger and so much better and so much gooder and more beautiful and true. That's what faith is. And just sit with that for a second, because this changes everything. Because if faith is a choice, what does that tell us? It tells us that when you go to live out your faith, you don't have to wait till you have it. You don't have to wait till you have enough of it. You don't have to wait till you're sure and certain. That whole conversation is just thrown away because it's not about that. It's about choosing. It's about daring to move anyways. Which doesn't make it any easier, it makes it infinitely harder. But we bypass the whole conversation of like, oh, I just don't have enough faith to do this. I'm like, that's not the conversation. You're missing the point. And we can see this coming up in the Bible again and again and again. This is what's going down in the boat with the disciples when they're out on the lake and a storm comes and they're freaking out and Jesus is just having a nap. And they're like losing their minds, being like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And he's just sleeping. And they wake him up in a panic. And what does Jesus say? He pulls that line out that says, oh, you have little faith. He's not commenting that they lack something. He's commenting on the decision they made. This decision to let all of this dictate what is true instead of this. He's saying, if you guys just made a different choice, yes, there's a storm. Yes, it is scary. Yes, we might die. But why are you freaking out about it? You've got me by your side. We can get through this together. Everything is going to be okay, even if it's not all right. Resurrection happens, guys. There is a thing underneath the thing that is truer than that. And you made the wrong choice. Because faith is something that you choose. It's not something that you have. And this is why faith and courage go hand in hand. We should talk way more about courage than we really do, because it takes courage to step out. It takes courage to imagine something that is not in front of you. It takes courage to believe that maybe it's not all cruel. Maybe there is still goodness out there. Maybe it's not all unfair and unjust. Or even if it is, maybe there's something redeeming about it. And then you can step into this this belief, this buoyant thing that comes with our faith that says, yeah, everything's going to be okay. The worst thing is not the last thing. You will be okay. These things, these powers, these principalities that Paul calls them, they don't win. They don't need to win. Don't choose that. Choose something different. Yeah, as that all happens in our lives right now, I have to keep coming back to this conviction, this reminder that, oh yeah, it is awful and unfair and terrible, and I can't imagine living in a house with it. But it's not all a wash. It's not all for naught, because here's the other funny thing, and this is like a ha-ha kind of thing. When you make the choice of faith, everything shifts. And here's what we get to see life as. We get to see it as a gift. We get to see it as a gift. And while that gift comes with great suffering, and while that gift just brings pain, unfair pain, unjust pain, it also comes with great joy and beauty and love. And the trick is to see that and not the rest. The trick is to see that God is still good. I am still here. There is still beauty. There is still joy. There is still an abundance. And that slowly redeems and transforms this. And suddenly you're in a completely different spot than you were. Because now I get to do this hard work of focusing on this. And think, man, we got like 6 years with the guy. We got to rescue him from a life that would have just been awful. We got to learn to love this dog that refuses to be loved and give him a home. We got to watch him wiggle up to strangers in the park and make their day. We got to watch him be a big brother to Lewis. Does it still suck? Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. But I'm so grateful for it. And you can do the same. Like, what is that thing that you're bringing in with you today that's just awful and hard and heavy and should not be happening? I'm not going to tell you today that it shouldn't be happening, because that's just a crock. That's just not fair. But see through it. See past it. What goodness is around it? What truth is also present? And suddenly life isn't just cruel and awful and bad. But you see the goodness in it. You see the beauty, the holiness of it. And we can do the same thing out there. We can zoom out some more. And sure, we could write off the fact that we are one step closer to war, and we are seeing more and more abuses of power, and the climate is slowly falling apart. Sure, yes, we need to name that, and we need to address that. But we got to see past it and see in it. And what do we see? We see millions of people around the world showing up to protest tyranny and abuse of power. We see people looking out for each other. We see small acts of kindness. We see the slow work of justice and resurrection happening. And if we see all of those things, what do we get? What's the word we use to describe the thing that we get when we look at the good and beautiful behind the ugly and gross? We get hope. We get hope. And when the world is cruel and full of suffering and is unjust and unfair, the one thing we need is hope. This hope that tells us maybe it'll be okay. Maybe things will be all right. Maybe the cruelty doesn't have to win, but maybe something good can come out of this, something beautiful can come out of this. And the beautiful thing about hope is when you get it, you instantly know it's true, because all the things that gave you hope are the things that prove hope. And suddenly your faith comes alive. And suddenly you begin to live a little bit differently. And suddenly it's all right. It's going to be okay because you know there's a thing behind the thing behind the thing. And when you choose it, when you let that define and color in everything, that's when everything begins to shift back. That's when we do the hard work of walking, of choosing and guiding. And so this time is going to be for you. Because I all know we have things that can too easily color in everything. We live in a world that is just so dominantly hard. Our job as a community of faith is to not let those things color in and define everything, but to be people who dare to choose otherwise and become sources of hope for others. And so we're going to enter into a time of contemplation, a time of choosing faith. Kate and Jay are going to gift us with a song. Your job is to listen. Your job is to acknowledge the suffering, to lament it, to grieve it, to rage against it. Do all that. But see through it and look for the good that is there. And realize that we don't have a God who is up there, but we have a God who is down here, in it, with us and for us, redeeming, restoring, and transforming, making us and this world new. So as we head into this time, I invite you to be still, I invite you to listen, and I invite you to choose faith, courage, and hope. May grace be with you.